I'm going to tell you something. Something I've only said to my lawyer and to God. And even they don't have the whole truth. The whole truth is messier than what I told them. It's uglier. And somehow, it's more beautiful than anyone expects. My name is Helen. And after 42 years of marriage, my husband chose a younger woman. Not because I stopped loving him, not because I stopped trying. He chose her because she was 37. He was 61. And that math? That seemed to be all the math that mattered to him anymore. But this isn't a story about him. This is a story about what I discovered about myself. When the life I'd built, the identity I'd created, the person I'd become, suddenly wasn't enough. This is a story about who you find when everything you thought was permanent falls apart.
I was 21 when I met Robert, a nursing student, full scholarship, top of my class. I had plans that kept me awake at night, not from anxiety, from excitement, from knowing exactly who I was supposed to become. Robert was 25, quiet, the kind of man who doesn't apologize for wanting things. And what he wanted was me. Looking back now, and I've had a lot of time to look back, I can see it clearly. The way nursing student Helen became wife Helen, became mother Helen, became background character Helen. But in the moment, it didn't feel like disappearing. It felt like love. For 42 years, I made his coffee every single morning. 2 sugars. Not 1, not 3, 2. Do you understand what that means? For 4,000 mornings, for 4,000 times, I never got that wrong. I need breakfast while he read the newspaper behind a wall of newsprint. I ironed his shirts every Sunday night, the same day, the same time, for 42 years. I learned that the left sleeve goes first, then the right, that the collar needs to be angled exactly so. I made myself into a woman who knew these things, and I called it love. When our daughter Carolyn got scarlet fever, I stayed up for 72 hours straight, while Robert slept downstairs. When Michael got pneumonia at 3 years old, the kind that doesn't let go, I was the one holding him when his lungs forgot how to work. I was the one who called the ambulance at 3 in the morning. Robert held my hand in the waiting room. That was his way of loving me. Presence. Steadiness. Not grand gestures, just showing up. So when the nursing degree became impossible, it didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt like choosing. We decided together. That's what I told everyone. That's what I told myself. But here's what I know now. Decisions where one person sacrifices everything and the other benefits from that sacrifice, those aren't decisions. They're transactions. And I didn't even know I was the one paying. I was so busy being good at being his wife, I forgot I was supposed to be good at being myself. The years stacked up like ironed shirts in a drawer. Neat, organized, suffocating. And I didn't even know how to breathe anymore.
I didn't see it coming. I need you to understand that.
I wasn't one of those women who sees the signs and ignores them. I didn't see any signs, not at first. He started going to the gym. At 59 years old, my husband decided to get healthy. It seemed good, normal, responsible. Tuesdays, Thursdays, every single week, like clockwork. He'd come home on those days in a mood I didn't recognize, more alive than he'd been in years, more present, more like the man I married. And I remember thinking, God help me. I remember thinking it was wonderful that he'd found something that made him happy. I was happy for him. Can you imagine? Then he started showering at the gym. For efficiency, he said. Why drive home sweaty? That made sense. That made complete sense. Then his phone became important. Before, Robert left his phone on the kitchen counter like a forgotten water glass. Now, he carried it. Now, he checked it at strange hours. Now, he smiled at it. Not the smile I knew. A different smile. A smile that belonged to someone else's life. I told myself stories. I told myself he was checking the stock market, or work emails, or news alerts. I told myself I wasn't being paranoid. I told myself this was just what normal husbands do. We tell ourselves such beautiful lies when we're terrified of the truth. Darlene knew. She's been my friend since Michael was a baby. 38 years of friendship. She knew before I did. She called me on a Tuesday afternoon. She said, Helen, we need to talk. And in that moment, before she said another word, I already knew. Somehow I already knew. She said, Robert's been seen around town. She said, with a woman. Restaurants you two never go to. The movies in the afternoon. She said, I'm so sorry. And do you know what I did? I thanked her. I was polite, composed. I even made her tea while she was telling me about my husband's affair. I made her tea. That was the moment I realized I'd spent 42 years training myself to be composed while my life fell apart. I'd become so good at pretending, at swallowing my own truth, that even when my heart was breaking into pieces on my kitchen floor, my hands were steady enough to pour tea. I was a magician, just not in a way that was magical. I was disappearing in plain sight. I did something I'm not proud of. But I'm also done apologizing for it. That same week, I went through his credit card statements. The ones he'd left on the kitchen counter. Careless now, like he'd already checked out of needing to hide. I saw restaurants I'd never been to, coffee shops, hotels. Different hotels. Like he was trying to hide from more than just me. Then, I did something that surprised me about myself. I created a Facebook profile. I spent an hour finding a picture of a woman who wasn't me. Someone with kind eyes. Someone people would trust. Someone innocent. And I searched for her name. Jessica. Jessica Marie Sullivan. 20 minutes later, I had looked through 3 years of her photographs. I knew she was 37 years old, blonde, the kind of beauty that comes from time and youth and the luxury of not being disappointed yet. She smiled like someone who believed joy was the default setting, like sadness happened to other people. She worked at the gym as a personal trainer. The same gym. Tuesdays and Thursdays. I found 17 pictures of Robert on her phone that she'd posted to social media. 17 photographs of my husband smiling a smile I had never made him make. Not the small, contained smile I knew. This was different. This was a smile that said, I am awakening. I am becoming someone new. I am choosing joy over duty. That is what hurt the most. Not that he was having an affair. Not even that he'd planned it so deliberately. with such care. It was that another woman had been the one to remind him he could feel alive. That Jessica had made him smile in a way that decades with me never had. I kept looking at those pictures. I kept studying her face, trying to see what he saw, trying to understand what she had that I'd spent 42 years trying to be. But she wasn't trying. She was just 37 and beautiful in the way that doesn't require effort, in the way that comes from never having to disappear, never having to iron shirts on Sunday nights, never having to choose yourself and someone else, never having to become small so that someone else could be big. And in that moment, sitting at my kitchen table with my phone in my hand and 17 photographs of betrayal, I made a decision. Not in anger, in clarity. I was going to stop asking why he left and start asking who I became while I was waiting for him to stay. That was when everything shifted. Not the marriage, me.
3 days later, I made his coffee. 2 sugars. Not 1, not 3, 2. For the last time, I made it exactly how he liked it. I said, "Robert, we need to talk." He already knew. Of course he knew. He'd seen the evidence of my investigation in our browser history. He'd noticed things were different in how I was treating him. He could read the shift in my voice. He sat down at the kitchen table. The same table where I fed him breakfast for 4,000 mornings. The same table where our children did their homework. The same table where we got the news his mother was dying. The same table where I held his hand while he cried. And he said very quietly, "I'm in love with someone else." His voice wasn't angry, wasn't defensive. That was the worst part. He wasn't even sorry. He said, "And I can't pretend anymore that you're enough." Let me tell you what I felt in that moment. I felt the sound of my entire life shutting like a door. I felt 42 years pressing down on me at once. I felt the absence of everything I'd given up. The nursing degree, the career that waited for me, the version of Helen who had plans. I felt like a woman who'd been carrying water in a bucket with a hole in the bottom. And I just finally realized the bucket was always broken. And I'd been doing the carrying. And nobody was ever going to fill me back up. And then something happened. I got up from that table. I walked to the sink, and I poured his coffee down the drain, 2 sugars and all. And I said, "Okay." That's all I said. Okay. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't beg him to stay or ask him to leave. I just accepted it. And in that acceptance, something inside me died, but something else woke up. Something that had been sleeping for 42 years. Something that remembered what it felt like to make decisions for myself. Not for him, not for my children, not for anyone. For me. That was the moment the old Helen left. That kitchen table moment was our ending, but it was also my beginning.
3 weeks after Robert left, I was in the garden. I have these roses, yellow ones. The first thing I planted when we moved into this house in 1983. Robert always complained they made him sneeze. So I planted them anyway. Even then, I think some part of me knew that I could make my own choices, even if I didn't know how to live them yet. I was watering them, really looking at them for the first time in years when I realized something. Those roses don't care who planted them. They don't care who watered them for 40 decades. They don't care about any of the history, the sacrifice, the heartbreak. They just keep growing. They just keep blooming because that's what they're made to do. And I thought I'm made to bloom too. That night, I made a phone call to the state university. My hands were shaking when I dialed. A woman answered. Her name was Patricia. I said, "I want to enroll." Patricia said, "What are you interested in studying?" And I said something I hadn't said in 42 years. I said, "Nursing." I started a degree when I was 21 years old. I never finished it. I'd like to finish it now. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It would be our honor to have you." Not pity, not doubt, not questions about my age, just, it would be our honor. I'm 64 years old. I'm a grandmother. I have arthritis in my left hand. I lose my reading glasses every single day. And I'm going back to nursing school, full time. For the first time in 42 years, I'm choosing something for me. Not because it will make Robert happy, not because it will help my children or my grandchildren or fulfill anyone's expectations of who I'm supposed to be, but because somewhere inside this 64-year-old woman is a 21-year-old girl who had plans, who wanted to heal people, who never actually went anywhere. She was just waiting for me to remember her name. My granddaughter came to visit last Saturday. Her name is Emma. She's 8 years old. She has Robert's serious expression and my stubbornness. I love her ferociously. She climbed up on the kitchen counter, which her mother will kill me for allowing, and she asked me something. She said, "Grandma, are you sad that Grandpa left?" And I stopped what I was doing. I set down my coffee, and I knelt down in front of her. My knees complained a little, but they're learning to be quiet. I said, "I was sad, sweetheart. I was very sad for a long time." She waited. Emma's good at waiting. I said, "But then I remembered something important. I remembered that I'm the same person who made your daddy feel better when he had pneumonia. I was the one who held him while his lungs tried to work. I'm the same person who can make a pie from scratch without a recipe. I never have to write it down. It's in my hands. It's in my memory.
I'm the same person who knows how to make flowers grow in dirt, even in dry seasons, even when nobody thinks anything will bloom there. I know how to do that. And that person, she's not sad. She's too busy being magnificent. Emma was quiet for a moment. Then she said, very seriously, I think you're more magnificent than Grandpa. And I hugged her. I held her small body in my arms, and I whispered into her hair, so do I. That was the moment I knew. I didn't just survive the betrayal. I transcended it. That kitchen counter moment with Emma, that was my real victory. Not against Robert, for myself. Because I wasn't just teaching my granddaughter that her grandmother was magnificent. I was teaching her something more important. I was teaching her that when a woman knows her own worth, really knows it, that knowledge becomes a gift she passes down. That becomes a map for the next generation that says you are allowed to be whole. You are allowed to bloom. You are never supposed to make yourself small. That was worth all of it.
I'm 3 semesters into my nursing degree now. My hands shake sometimes when I'm doing clinical practice, because 40 years is a long time away from a classroom. But they steady when I'm actually helping someone. My hands remember what they were trained to do. I'm going to be a nurse. The thing I was supposed to be when I was 21. The thing I never stopped being in my heart. Carolyn drives me to campus on Mondays and Wednesdays. She cries sometimes when she talks about it. She said, I grew up thinking you had to choose between being a good mother and being yourself. You're teaching me that's a lie. Michael pays for my textbooks without being asked. He doesn't say why. He just does it. That's his way of saying, I understand what you're doing, and I'm proud of you. The house is mine now. The roses are thriving like they've never thrived before. Sometimes I stand in the garden and I think about who I was on the day we moved in. A young woman in a garden. I think about that, Helen, and I want to tell her something. I want to say, you're going to lose everything you think you're supposed to keep. You're going to give up all the things you think will make you happy. And you're going to be right about that, in a way. Those things won't make you happy. But you're also going to discover something else. Something nobody told you about. You're going to discover yourself. And that's going to be worth the wait. I need you to hear something. If you're listening to this, and you're a woman of a certain age, if you've built a life, if you've poured yourself into someone else's dream, I need you to really hear me. You are not too old. Not too old to start over. Not too old to change. Not too old to dream. You are not too much. You are not too loud or too ambitious or too needy or too demanding. You are not too tired. I'm 64 with arthritis, and I'm studying organic chemistry. If I'm not too tired, neither are you. You are not less than. Less than what? Less than you were? Less than you could have been? Less than the version of yourself that someone else decided was acceptable? That's a lie. You are the accumulation of every choice you made to love someone else. Every sacrifice, every compromise, every time you made yourself smaller so someone else could be bigger. And now it's time. It's time to make choices to love yourself. The world has told us a story. It told us our value is in our youth, that our purpose is to keep a man happy, that our power is in our silence, that our worth expires when our skin starts to line, that we should fade quietly into the background and be grateful for whatever crumbs we're given. I'm here to tell you, the world is a liar. At 64, I am more myself than I have ever been. I am not too old to love. I am too old to tolerate less than I deserve. I am too old to keep my coffee mug on the wrong shelf so nobody gets upset. I am too old to apologize for wanting more. I am too old to make excuses for people who aren't even thinking about me. The world tells us our story ends when the man leaves. The world says we're finished. The world says we're lucky we had what we had. The world says we should fade quietly into the background. I'm here to tell you something different. Your story is not over. It's just beginning. The best chapters are written in the aftermath. When you've lost everything you thought mattered, and you discover what actually does. And what actually does? It's you. It's your voice. It's your dreams that you've been carrying in your heart for 40 years. It's the girl inside you who wanted to be a nurse, or a teacher, or an artist, or a healer, or anything. It's that girl. And she's still in there. She never left. She was just waiting for you to remember her name. You don't need permission. You don't need anyone to decide you're worth investing in. You don't need to wait until you're alone to remember you were never just half of a pear. You were always a whole person. They just made you feel small. Maybe you're not 64 yet. Maybe you're 50 and you can already see it coming. The slow fade, the gradual disappearance of yourself. If you can see it, you can stop it. Right now. Today. Maybe you're 68 and you think it's too late. Let me tell you something. It's never too late to bloom.
I was watering my roses the other day, the same ones I planted 42 years ago. The ones Robert always complained made him sneeze. You know what I realized? Those roses don't care about Robert anymore. They don't care about his small choices, his smaller heart, his perfectly ironed shirts folded exactly so. They're just doing what roses do. They're blooming. In spite of everything, because of everything. Because the soil that was watered by my hands for 42 years, that soil now knows how to hold them. The roots grew deep while I was busy being someone else, and now those roses are thriving. Not in spite of my sacrifice, but because I finally learned to water myself too. I'm not angry at Robert anymore. I'm not even sad. I'm just grateful. Grateful that he was small enough to leave. Grateful that his leaving meant I had to find myself. Grateful that at 64, I discovered that the girl who wanted to be a nurse at 21, she never actually went anywhere. She was just waiting. Waiting for me to stop watering everyone else's roses and remember that I was a garden too. So here's what I want to say before I go. If you're listening and any part of Helen's story is your story too, you don't have to wait for someone else to decide your worth. You don't have to wait for permission to become yourself. You don't have to wait until you're broken to start rebuilding. You can choose differently, right now, today. I'm Helen, and I spent 42 years being someone's wife, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life being my own. And I'm never making his coffee again. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have a story like this, if someone made you feel invisible or small or not enough, I want to hear it. Leave it in the comments below. Tell me when you realized you deserved better. Tell me when you decided to bloom. Because every single woman reading this needs to know you are not alone. And your story is just beginning. It's never too late. It's never too late to be magnificent.